Welcome to Join Our Town. I am your host for this segment, AC Dunlap, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today. I am honored today to be sitting here with Lady Michelle Henderson from Victory Deliverance Church out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Excited about our conversation today, and we're going to start off talking about the topic of women, which is something that is really kind of a hot topic, but very much needed.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about your ministry and kind of what's going on in that area?
Well, the ministry that God has birthed out of me is called Know Your Worth Ministries. And Know Your Worth is for women, for us to empower women to know their value and their true worth. Because a lot of women just don't know who they are, have been beaten, abused, misused, physical, verbal, mental. And what our job is with Know Your Worth is to let them know it's more to life than to be abused and to not know who you are as a woman.
Yeah. How important do you think that that is, in particularly in the church, of knowing your value and who you are as a woman?
Well, it's so important because, you know, in some traditional ministries, you know, the woman just cook.
Right.
That's not our role.
Right.
The Lord told them to go out 2 by 2. He didn't say if it was male or female.
Right.
And then in Joel, he said he'll pour out his spirit upon all flesh, that your sons and your daughters prophesy. So us as women, we need to know our place. We know that we're underneath the man. And we know that the man, Christ is over the man, and God, we know the Godhead. But us as women, just because we're at the bottom of that Godhead doesn't mean that we're not supposed to operate as true, valuable women of God. And there's so many women in the Bible that were assets and not liabilities.
Right.
And we have too many liabilities in the kingdom as women. And it's time for us to stand and be assets.
Yes, that's good.
Yes, ma'am.
The conception of your program, how did God give that to you?
Well, God gave it to me 3 years ago. He actually, of course, gave it to me when I was born.
Yes.
But it didn't come to this full fruition until 3 years ago when I had an accident at a skating rink. Because I was that type of woman. I was in the church for 19 years, but I wasn't saved. I played the game. I shouted, I ran, I spoke in tongues, all the good stuff. I was an assistant pastor's wife, then I became a pastor's wife, and I still didn't know who I was. And 3 years ago, in a skating rink, I had a freak accident, and the Lord allowed me to bust my mouth open, where I had 19 stitches in and out of my lip, where it was hanging off, and my 2 front teeth were in my hand. At the skating ring. And the reason I was at the skating ring is because I was cheating on my husband. I was in church, but I was committing adultery. So God got my attention real good. And that's how I began to know who I was. It wasn't about playing games in God. It was truly living for Christ. I knew who I was a little bit. I knew I was a prayer warrior. I knew I could go to God. I knew I could reach the throne. But I didn't use it. I didn't value it. I didn't value Christ, honestly. So when I had my accident, it was time. I knew it was time. That was more than a warning. It was my destruction.
Wow, wow.
Yes, ma'am.
First thing to kind of come to mind as you're talking is just how the enemy kind of makes plans based upon individuals. Of course, the Bible talks about that he comes to kill, steal, and to destroy. So ultimately, you know, that's his goal. But each plan is catered individually towards us. There are a lot of women now that are kind of dealing with those issues. And I believe that a lot of them are issues that have been perpetuated historically. Some things from people who maybe it wasn't my sin or my knowing, but it was my mother or my grandmother, a cycle, that's the word I'm looking for,
Yes.
A cycle that has been perpetuated. How do you break a cycle that has perpetuated for so long?
How I broke the generational curse that was in my family, it started when I was a little girl. My parents were married but not saved, and they separated at the age when I was the age of 6. And my sisters they're older than me, so they were messing with men, much older than them. My mother wasn't raised by her mother. So my mother is now the best grandmother, but she didn't know really how to be that mother. So then when it was time for her to be my mother, she left.
Wow.
And I was raised by my father, who was an alcoholic.
Okay.
So as I was, while I was a little girl, I was being molested. And in that molestation, the boy I found out, he was molested. And then I found out my sister had some issues with a family member. So with that generational curse, the first thing was not to be in self-denial and believe and know that it happened to you. The second thing it was, I started talking about it. I started talking to my husband about it because our marriage was so messed up because I was holding on to the generational curse that was in my family. Even with alcohol. I even went to alcohol for a little bit. But that generational curse didn't hold, it couldn't hold me because I didn't like the taste of it. But other things, as far as not being faithful to my husband, not being the mother that I needed to be to my children, all that had to play with that generational curse. So my first thing was stop denying. That self-denial. That's the worst deception is self-deception. And I would deceive myself. I would tell myself I'm okay, but I would tell God I'm not okay. Or vice versa. I say, God, I'm okay, but I tell myself I'm not okay. So that denial, that's the first thing to get out of a generational curse. Is quit denying that you've been through that or that curse runs through your family.
Wow. Healing. I hear a little bit of that because I know just through situations, sometimes even we don't realize that we're wounded and we don't realize that we need to be healed. God knows. How important is that in empowering women? Empowering women with the healing process, that's major. Because a lot of times we heal the outside wounds, but we don't deal with the internal. Right. And the internal healing is going back, taking them women of God back or taking the women back to their childhood, to their past, and going to find the root of the issue. The healing process, when you find the root of the cancer, we got to find out where it's at in order to remove it. Right. And that's what we don't do. Right. So with Know Your Worth, we're trying to go back. And we got to walk back in your past with you so we can pull that out and realize, yeah, you was hurt. Yes, that person done that. And even in your healing process, it come forgiven. Amen. And deliverance, and everything will start taking its place. Amen. And the receiving of it as well. A lot of times, I know that it's hard to forgive yourself. Definitely. You know, even when you believe that God has forgiven you, it's hard to forgive yourself. And the enemy uses that to keep, in particular, I'll say women, stifled because it's a shame piece. You know, it's a piece of nobody else has been through it. Or God, even when I knew better, you know, I still did, you know, or feeling unworthy. How do you get women past that point of condemnation? The point of condemnation, it's a process. What I do, I'm patient. Amen. It takes more than one time to talk. Absolutely. It takes more sometimes than 10 times to talk. Yes. Then there are sometimes you just can't say nothing. All you can do is cry. Yes. And then that's when the spirit of discernment can kick in. Yes. Where God, you can use me to discern and help you with that process. So it takes so much time to forgive you. It took me a while to forgive me. But when I really surrendered, when I really, really stopped playing, that's when the forgiving process for myself started. Not nobody else. Right. Even the person that molested me, I didn't even go with them. It was more, I had to deal with me first. So with that, what I would say to a woman that is in that, going through that process, take your time. I say it all the time. One day may be too long. So take it 1 minute. And if 1 minute is too long, take it just 1 second at a time. Sometimes as in Christendom, it's like, get over it. Right. Just be delivered. Right. It's not just that. Right. Take time. It's a process just like childbirth. Yes. Just like death, it's a process. Absolutely. So the day that you die to yourself is the day that you will live. So what do you say to a woman who feels like, I know in my head, you know, what you're saying is logical. I know that God has called me to a certain place, but I've had wounds that are so deep that I don't feel like, even if I wanted to be healed or wanted to move forward, I could. What do you say to that woman who feels like there is just really no hope? I'm going to carry you until there's hope. I'm going to carry you. I'm going to live holy for you. Amen. That's my response. Yes. I will wait. Yes. I will hang on to you. Yes. And I'm not going to let you go until God do something for you. Amen. So sometimes it takes somebody else. The Bible says where there's two or three. When one fall,
there's another there to pick them up. So you need somebody.
Yes.
What happened is we ain't patient enough. We don't have enough love. The Bible says love covers
A multitude.
a multitude of sins. So
Right.
my love
Right.
can cover you so much
Yes.
to where you want to get rid of it.
Yes. Amen. That's good. Amen. Historically, and I'll say this is from a natural standpoint, women have always carried the label of that we can't get along, that we can't work together. And you've seen a lot even in the church.
Definitely.
And again, of course, that is just a device of the enemy, you know, to kill, steal, and to destroy because of who we are. How do you encourage, from a ministry standpoint, women to, and you said it as far as love, but to really come together to be able to bear that burden? Because if I don't like you, you know, I'm just here, I'm
Definitely.
really not going to do what God is calling me to do. So how do you, even as the first lady, kind of encourage that in your ministry?
Well, my first step is I'm real transparent and honest in our ministry.
Okay.
So if I have an issue with someone, first example, I go to them.
Okay.
If I have an issue even in the ministry, I stand up and I apologize. I humble myself to our church. So from another woman to another woman that dislike each other, what I do with Know Your Worth, we have a lot of activities.
Okay.
We do unity, we do team building.
Okay.
We have Christmas ugly sweater parties. Once a month, we have a class together. And more times than not, when we break off into groups, you have to break off into somebody that you don't know.
Okay.
So we can become unified. Because what I tell the women of God in our ministry, that person just may be holding your blessing, who you don't like. Me too. Somebody that I may have an issue with, they just may be holding what God had for you so you can deal with that inner wound. Because you don't know what they've been through. They've probably been through the exact same thing you've been through and can help you come out. But because you don't like what they have on or because their hair is done all the time, you don't never judge a book by its cover. So what I would suggest to a woman with Know Your Worth is leave your gift at the altar. Go to your sister and reconcile.
Right.
If I have to go to him with you, let's do it. Let's get to the root. Let's find out what's wrong.
Amen.
And more times than not, it's miscommunication,
Amen.
which we know the enemy brings everywhere.
Amen. This is good. I don't want you to go anywhere, and I want you to stay with us as well. We are here with Lady Michelle Henderson from Cincinnati, Ohio, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about marriage. Stay tuned.